David Haye versus Tony Bellew, the rematch, or Tony Bellew versus David Haye, whichever way you want to word it. Some people have scratched their heads at why David Haye insists on it being Haye Bellew, the rematch. People think that that shows some psychological weakness on David Haye's part, but whatever the case may be, this is my breakdown and prediction for the fight. Now, I think one thing 99.9% of us can agree on is that a prime David Haye beats Tony Bellew. And in fact, I think most of us would agree that a prime David Haye beats Tony Bellew by knockout. But what we have today is obviously and definitely not a prime David Haye. His prime is long, long, long gone. What we have is an injury-prone 37-year-old David Haye whose best years are behind him. He's coming off the first loss to Tony Bellew, where he injured his Achilles. He was supposed to fight the rematch last year, but he injured his bicep. So we know what we're getting with him. But here's the thing. David Haye also knows now what we're getting with him. See, sometimes fighters can delude themselves and can convince themselves that they're better than they really are. And I think that's what David Haye did going into the first Bellew fight. I think David Haye believed he was in a much better place as a fighter than he really was. And he got a rude awakening in the Tony Bellew fight. He realized that he's nowhere near as good as he thought he was, nowhere near as good as he used to be, and that Bellew was a lot better than he gave him credit for. These are all the things David Haye came to discover in that first Bellew fight. Going into this rematch, David Haye knows all those things now. He knows he's not the fighter he used to be. He knows Tony Bellew has boxing skills and he's savvy and he's tougher than he thought he was. David Haye knows all these things now. He's got a much more realistic view of where he's at as a fighter and what Tony Bellew can do as an opponent. And because of this, you have to ask yourself the question, okay, we don't have a prime David Haye, but can the current version of David Haye formulate a game plan which is good enough to scrape by and get a win over Tony Bellew? Because, I mean, if we're talking prime for prime, do you put Tony Bellew and David Haye in the same league? Or do you say David Haye is levels and levels above Tony Bellew? Most people would say the latter, right? So what I'm saying is I actually think that David Haye can beat Tony Bellew in this rematch. I think he's going to box a relatively conservative fight, not only because he doesn't want to overexert himself and run out of stamina, not only because he doesn't want to get hit with any Tony Bellew counters, but also because he doesn't want to injure himself in the fight. To me, I see many reasons why David Haye would box a safe fight this time around. He's got the longer reach. I think he's probably going to stay behind the jab, be fairly low volume, and just try and keep Tony Bellew in place and not really go for the KO unless Bellew comes at him. This is what I suspect David Haye is going to do. Yes, he wants to win in spectacular fashion, but even if he retires on this fight, because David Haye said if he wins the fight but doesn't look good, he's still going to retire. David Haye would still rather win the fight and look bad than not win the fight at all. And I'm sure David Haye knows in his mind that if he tries to go for the KO with reckless abandon, there's a very good chance he's not going to win the fight at all. Yeah, if he just approaches this rematch the same way he approached the first fight. So, yeah, I actually think David Haye is going to box a conservative fight. And I'm picking David Haye to win this fight on points. That might surprise some people. Some people might think it's counterintuitive or whatever. I've given you my rationale. I think David Haye is going to win the fight on points. It's going to be, I believe, a conservative performance from him. He can knock Tony Bellew out if he lands clean enough. Definitely. He's got the power there. Yeah. I just think that both guys are going to err on the side of caution. Haye's going to be cautious because he don't want to injure himself. He don't want to get countered. He's unsure about where he's at as a fighter. He's going to try and stick to his boxing. Hit and don't get hit. You know, he's got the longer arms, so you don't necessarily have to be on the back foot. You can be in the middle of the ring. He's got the longer arms. He'll stick a jab out there and just try and pick rounds up. And Tony Bellew, he knows if he walks forward, David Haye's got a tremendous right hand. And David Haye is one of the few fighters who's got tremendous punching power, even on the back foot. We saw that, well, we've seen it many times, but a good example of it would be the first round against John Ruiz, where he's backpedaling, Ruiz is coming forward, David Haye walks him onto a right hand and drops him. Yeah? So Bellew's going to know that. So I think it may be a bit of a stalemate in this fight, with David Haye boxing far more sensibly, conservatively, picking up points, trying to frustrate Bellew, waiting for Bellew, the man with the shorter arms, to actually try and get close to him and rush in, and then Haye will launch the big punches. And that could result in a knockout if Bellew decides to take any chances. That could result in him getting laid out. But yeah, that's my prediction, people. I think David Haye is going to win the fight. And if I had to bet on it, I would go David Haye on points. Yeah, not that he doesn't have the power to knock out Bellew. He does. I'm just not sure he's going to take too many risks. And I'm not sure Bellew's going to take too many risks, to be honest. You know, we'll see how it goes. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Those are my thoughts. I think the mental approach from David Haye is going to be very different this time around, similar to how James DeGale's mental approach in the Truax rematch a few weeks ago was different. Yeah? DeGale knew what to expect from Truax. He knew he couldn't hang around on the ropes like he did in the first fight. He knew he had to keep it moving. He knew he had to smother Truax on the inside to prevent his inside work. Yeah? He knew all these things going into the rematch, and so he prepared accordingly. And I think David Haye is going to be the same. He knows he can't be on the outside swinging big haymakers, you know, lunging in, because he'll get countered. He knows he's the guy with the longer reach. Why not use the longer reach? You know, I think he's going to prepare accordingly, and I think he's going to come out victorious. Would I bet my house on it? No, because David Haye's so injury prone. It's incredible at this stage. I mean, he's always been injury prone, but at this stage of his career, it's far worse than it's ever been. So I certainly wouldn't bet my house on it. And obviously he did lose the first fight, but yeah, I just think he's going to formulate tactics this time around whereby he's going to minimize his mistakes and force Bellew to actually take more risks in order to get to him. The reach of both fighters is vastly different. David Haye's got, what, a 78-inch reach? I don't know what the arm length is, but I know his arm length is a hell of a lot longer than Bellew's. Bellew's reach must be, I don't know, 73, I'm guessing? 74, something like that. Haye's got a way longer reach, way longer arms, and I think he's going to use them this time. So, we'll see. Let me know how you feel, people. It's happening, I'm out.